Hello, my name's Wendell. I'm the math guy. Ta-da! Here's my first video, and I'm going to teach a series of videos on quadratic equations. And I'm going to teach you how to solve them by first factoring, completing the square, and using the quadratic formula. So I'm going to start out with the very basic and move to more and more complex, and we'll get through this. Well, first of all, what are quadratic equations? And what is the basic form of a quadratic equation, and how do you solve a quadratic equation? Well, there is the three methods that I told you about: factoring, completing the square, or using the quadratic formula. And I'll take you through the quadratic formula in a later video and show you how to solve for that. But a lot of times they say, well, factor it. But how do you do that? So first of all, let's just take a look at what is a quadratic equation. Quadratic equation is simply an equation where you've got an x value and it is squared to the power of 2, the exponent of 2. Okay? X to the 1/2. No, you wouldn't find that in a quadratic equation. X to the negative 1. No, that's not in a quadratic equation. It's x squared, and that's it. Now, what is the basic form that quadratic equation comes in? The basic form, algebraic form, is a x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Now, when you're given a quadratic equation and you're told to solve it, do you always want to try and get it in this form first before attempting to solve it, to see how you're going to approach it? If you can factor it, or if you need to complete the square, or if you should go ahead and use a quadratic equation. For example, if your teacher gives you an equation or you have a problem and you have like 3x equals 22 minus 2x squared. What do you want to do with that? You want to bring everything over to the left-hand side. So you have 2x squared plus 3x minus 22 equals 0. So you want to get it in this form. Okay, and I should point out, like, your coefficients of x, 2, 3, 22, correspond with A would be 2, B would be 3x, C would be your minus 22. So you always want to get it into this form. So a lot of times in your problems that you're going to deal with in your math courses, they aren't going to give you the equation in that form. You have to, they'll probably want you to put it in this form. Just another example that you might see is you might be given an equation like 3x squared equals 18x plus 24. So again, you'd want to bring it all to one side. X. But the other thing you would notice here is these are all divisible by 3. So you'd want to factor out a 3, divide it out. So you'd have x squared minus 6 minus 8 equals 0 over 3 equals 0. To help simplify this down, to make it easier to solve. Okay? So now, let's get into how do you factor this? What does that even mean? So, let's get at it. Now, we'll say that solving quadratic equations is a bit of a leap. Sometimes it's just a little bit hard to get a hold of. But if you practice a little bit, it comes to you easy. And like I said, I'm going to start out with a very easy method. Now, before we do a problem, I'm going to give you a little algebraic lesson here to help you understand the method I'm going to show you to factor these. So imagine if you had two terms, x plus b1, and you had x plus b2. And you were to multiply that out, you expanded it, you would end up with x squared plus b1 plus b2 times x plus b1 times b2. So what I want you to notice here is your a here, and actually there's just a 1. The b corresponds to b1 and b2, and c corresponds to b1 times b2. Okay? Now, if you're given a quadratic equation, and it is, let's say, x squared just a minute. Notes. And you're given an x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. And I say factor that. Factor that. What are the two factors? Okay. Well, we know that the two factors are they're going to correspond to this. Okay. You're going to have a b1, you're going to have a b2, and you're going to have an x and an x. Now we know from this example, if you have a coefficient on A that is 1 on both, okay, it's just going to be x. But what about b1 and b2? Well, what we know is b1 plus b2, it's going to equal 4, right? And b1 times b2 is going to equal 3. So the way to figure this out, and you can sort of do this logic in your head, but this is what multiplies, what two products will give you 3? It can be 1 times 3, or it can be 3 times 1. I know this sounds very basic, but these both equal 3. Okay, but do these add up to 4? Does 1 plus 3 equal 4? Yes, it does. So we can go ahead and use that. B1 would be 1, and B2 would be 3. And this is all equal to 0. So now you've got your two terms, x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. So now go ahead and solve that. What is the answer? Well, with a quadratic equation, you always have two solutions. And I hope you can see that this term times this term equals 0. If this term equals 0 or this term equals 0, when you multiply them together, it's going to be equal to 0. So it's very easy to solve this. You can have x plus 1 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. And that would mean x is equal to negative 1, or x is equal to negative 3. Now that's your solution. Now I know, especially you've just started this, let's go ahead and check this by putting these numbers into our equation. So let's substitute x equals negative 1. So we would have negative 1 squared plus 4 times negative 1 plus 3. And that would give us 1 minus 4 plus 3. And I think you can do that in your head. 1 plus 3 is 4, minus 4 is 0. And if we substitute x equals negative 3, we'll get negative 3 squared plus 4 times negative 3 plus 3 equals 9 minus 12 plus 3. 3 plus 9 is 12, minus 12 equals 0. And there's your solution. Okay? So we'll do a couple more examples. And before, let me just turn the board over. Okay, let's move on to another example. My battery died and I had to change that out, but here I am back. Let's do another example. And let's get up our basic form of x plus b1, x plus b2. And remember now we have, that gave us for our b term, we had b plus b2. And for the c term, we had b1 times b2. So let's go with the second example here. 5. And b1 times b2 is going to be minus 14. So we're looking for something that will multiply to minus 14 and add to negative 5. Now whenever a product is equal to a negative number, as you know, one is going to have to be positive, one is going to have to be negative. And we'll need a bigger negative number than the positive number because we have the sum is a negative number, minus 5. So, you know, it's only minus 14, so it has to be something like minus 7 times 2, that equals negative 14, and 2 minus 7 is negative 5. So b1 is minus 7, b2 is plus 2. Okay, so therefore we have x minus 7 equals 0, or we have x plus 2 equals 0, and that gives us x is 7, or x is negative 2. So we'll do a check, and we will substitute x equals 7 into, and we'll call that equation 1. Okay, so we have 7 squared minus 5 times 7 minus 14. And what do we get? 49 minus 35 minus 14, that equals 0. 49 minus 14 is 35. 35 minus 35 is 0. And x minus 2, we'll do that into equation 1, and we get negative 2 squared minus 5 times negative 2 minus 14, and that is going to equal 4 plus 10 minus 14 equals 0. And there you go. So with a little practice, you should become experts at this. Just remember your first step. Always bring it into this form. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then factor. In the next video, I'm going to take it to the next level, where a is going to be greater than 1, and that kind of changes it. We're still going to be dealing with whole numbers, but it makes us a little higher level of complexity. And we'll get into that next video. So thanks for watching. I hope this was a help. Let me know in the comments below if you have any. And let me know how I can improve. And I'll see you in the next video.